All right, g'day Novocastrians. Welcome to COVIDcast 2, Electric Boogaloo. We decided that there's enough news going around with the league and the Jets at the moment that we should probably get some people on to have a chat about all the current updates and everything that's happening. We've brought Lukey back. Hello, Luke. How you going, mate?
I'm not doing too bad, Furns. How are you?
Beautiful, and that's an awesome background. That was the one I was wanting to go with. Like, for some reason, my Zoom settings have every time I put a photo up, it all comes up reversed. So, I couldn't have a Newcastle banner in the background that was, around the wrong way. But
I was going to say the beard's coming along well for you. It's going well.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
And it's going well for our other guests as well.
Isolation has been helped, and we do welcome back. We've dragged him, dragged him out of retirement to bring him back onto the squad for a one-off game. It's welcome to the inspirational Joel Goodsir. Joel, how you going, mate?
Very happy to be here. And look, this is a full bearded pod. This is how it should be. All man.
Well, we're just tossing up potential names of podcast episodes all over the place. So we'll have to see what we go for, something bearded related. Joel, how have you been going with the lockdown stuff? Obviously, everything's starting to get back to normal at the moment. But how's everything going in Inspiration Paint with everything being shut and yourself and staff and everything? And how are things getting back to normal now?
Yeah, we've been really lucky because the government didn't close our stores. So if they had, we would have been kind of screwed in a big way. So because we were open, it's just fantastic. What happened is we had a boom of retail DIYers buying paint because they're in lockdown, looking at their four walls, working from home.
Guilty.
Yeah, nice, Lukey. So yeah, we're actually had a really good 3 months, massively up on last year in the retail side of the business. The trade side's a bit different, which is the big part of our business, selling to commercial painters. That's been pretty flat, but the retail side's been phenomenal, really good.
Yeah, it's one of the few industries that has been doing well out of it. It's been the home improvement industry. It's just it's been DIY heaven for a bunch of people with nothing to do. They've just been knocking out kitchens and painting exteriors and everything. So, what about you, Lukey? How's everything going with getting back to training and coaching and all that other stuff?
Well, we're looking pretty good. At the moment, I'm back at work now. Back on part-time, which is good. In terms of training and everything, the government announced maybe just over a week ago now that they were going to allow up to groups of 20 for training, which helps a lot more teams. For me personally, I haven't been back to training yet because we had to change clubs and we've been washed out with the weather we had the last couple of weeks, so we haven't got back to training ourselves yet. But we're looking good. I think for us, our season starts first week of July. More locally in their Premier competitions, it's more mid-July that they're all kicking off. So hopefully we don't have what's happening in Victoria at the moment, where they're having a bit of a spike and they're going back into lockdown. But only time will tell with that, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's been a lot of news going around with various northern clubs in the Northern New South Wales football banner have been withdrawing from in various levels. There's been a lot of clubs saying they're not going to participate in some competitions. What's been the main reasoning for all that, Luke? Is it basically down to there's no crowds, therefore it's very, very unlikely these clubs are going to be able to get some money to help cover their expenses? Or what's been the main reasons why so many, and some big clubs too, have been withdrawing from various competitions at different age levels and stuff? What's been the most of these sort of clubs' reasonings behind it?
I can't really answer that only because I haven't dealt with clubs. I don't do any of that. So Premier comp wise, all of the Northern Premier clubs are continuing at this stage. It's more the community level clubs that have either withdrawn their season or withdrawn part of their season. I think a lot of that for those guys, and this is just from what I've seen on Facebook, as well as with my old club, was that it was down to volunteers. They didn't think it was feasible to, have X amount of volunteers needed to run a game day, to I guess go under what was needed to maintain social distancing, maintain cleanliness, all that sort of stuff. So there have been a number of clubs that have withdrawn from the community football season this year, which is a shame. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a difficult one. I think for some of them, it's a case of, we don't really want to, have someone come down with it in our club and then be seen as, well, it's come from your club. This is your problem. You're the one who's done this. I don't know whether that's part of it. But yeah, that's probably as well as I can answer that, unfortunately.
Yep, no, fair enough. But I think a lot of the, Joel, I don't know what you've been seeing on social media, but I think a lot of it's down to volunteers being expected to police things like social distancing and a whole bunch of extra stuff on top of what they're already doing for free, having to track people and keep numbers, basically being bouncers and only letting a certain amount of people getting into grounds, and people are distancing themselves, and all this extra stuff that they're, for a volunteer organization that, is not getting paid. It's just all this extra stuff that it's just going to be too much hassle for them to be expected to do.
Yeah, I think that's it. Lots of regulations, lots of not being able to use change rooms to the extent, or bathrooms, and social distancing in the crowd as well. Like you can only bring one person to training or to a game. And my son plays for Broadmeadow Magic and under 13s, and he's back training, and Broadmeadow are committed to continuing. But I know, Jaffers and New Lambton aren't, and some others. So I can totally understand it. I think it's a real shame for the kids, but I also think it is a proper impost on the clubs with their volunteers and all of that.
Yep. Okay. All right. Opening question without notice. So we're in episode 2. What's the Luke? What's the best movie sequel that, in your opinion, what's a movie sequel that was better than the original?
Better than the original? That's a big call. I guess in terms of finding a sequel that was, I guess, on par with the original, for me would be Shrek 2.
Okay.
And Empire Strikes Back.
Yep. Oh, you've stolen my Star Wars. My Star Wars thunder. What about you, Joel?
Probably not better than the original, but the Godfather series, they're all brilliant. There's no weak link in my views.
Yep. No, that's fair enough. So yeah, Luke, you stole my Star Wars one. This is not really.
I figured that's where you were going with this.
Yeah. Well, episode 2 of the COVIDcast, I thought I'd come up with a sequel related question. Anybody else got any sequel related answers to the question? Chuck it up on our Twitter or on our Facebook once we post the video up. Right, so the news, guys, has been coming out thick and fast. Lukey, we'll kick it off with you. Obviously, the announcement came through early last week that the season would be getting back underway. The clubs were back training as of last week. I believe the Jets went in on Monday for a whole bunch of coronavirus testing, and then back to full-time training on Wednesday with obviously appropriate distancing measures and everything else. So the season will be starting on the 16th of July, and it's 27 games remaining, and that'll be played over 28 days and then into finals. So it's great that the football has actually got a timetable to come back, and it's going to be taking place, obviously. The initial thoughts is that it was going to be taking place in empty stadiums, but obviously the federal government has released guidelines that we might be moving to be able to 25% capacities and venues up to 40,000 seats. So we may end up, by the time the season kicks off, we might actually be able to go and watch some football in the ground rather than watching it on TV.
It's a bit crazy to think of that, given where we were 2 months ago, 3 months ago even. It's exciting. I guess for me, I've sort of, I guess, with this whole, however long it's been since the season was suspended, 3 months nearly now. It's sort of just, I've become completely removed from it. There's been different there's been a whole lot of other stuff to worry about. So coming back now and expecting to go on with the rest of the season, it's a bit weird. It feels a bit weird. I think everyone sort of expected that last game against City, that was it. I think everyone went into that game. The commentators did, the players did afterwards. There was a lot of talk about it, but at the day, you were like, well, that's the end of the season now. Like, we're just playing this game for the sake of it, so we can become grand final winners for 2019, 2020. But yeah, it's a bit weird. So the fact that it's been announced, I haven't really been as excited as I thought I would be, being able to watch the rest of the season and, as you say, go back to crowds in the grandstands and everything. I'm sure that'll change once we get a bit closer to July 16th, but by the time we get back to our first game. But I think we might be, like, depending on how they do it, whether we have games at McDonald Jones or whether games are, at a hub like they're doing with the NRL. It's, I think until then, and we'll just have to sort of see what happens with the crowd numbers. If it's at McDonald Jones and they're saying that grounds under 50,000 can have 25% capacity, we'll be one of the ones that, our ground's fairly decent. We would probably have between 25 and 50%. Well, 50% would be on like us versus Sydney top 2 day. So 25%, you'd almost be able to get all the members in there, which would be good. But
our stadium seats 50,000, doesn't
Depends how tightly you're packing on the hill.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how everyone gets back and see how, I guess, how slow it is to get back into the form that we had at the end of towards the end of that suspension there.
Yeah, I think someone put up a figure of 8,200 based on seating capacity and the 25% filling it. So it will be interesting because obviously everyone will have to be spread out. They'll probably end up having to use the dust off the cobwebs out in the Upper Eastern and get people there. And how do you put people on the hills, or is it only people will only be able to sit in the seats? Who knows how they're going to work it, but that's obviously information that's going to come out. Joel, what about you? How excited are you for the season? Finally, we've got concrete news that it's coming back. Are you excited, or are you simply you've been removed from it for so long that it's going to take a while for your excitement to get back up again?
I think this is how excited I am.
Nothing like 2 p.m. beers.
I'm very excited. I think I'm most excited because I've just spent this morning watching all the, EPL games from overnight, and, my team, Arsenal, just lost 2 in a row. So I'm really back in the zone of the Jets, like this is forever 7th, bring it on.
Yeah, well, it's a shame we can't get into Fox Sports or KO and check out all the old Newcastle Jets games that took place this season, but we'll get onto Fox Sports in a minute. So, Luke, the one thing that hasn't been released yet has been the actual revised rule that they've agreed on. There's apparently it's all signed off and they're just working out where they're going to take place, but we don't know who's playing when at the moment. How long do you think it's going to be before? I think apparently they've released the first game's going to be, I think, City playing somebody somewhere, but there's no full, none of the websites have been updated with when all these games are going to be taking place.
I imagine publicly will be different to when clubs and players are informed. I imagine that's sort of in the works already, and clubs may have had a chance to look at a draft draw, or at least this is what we're thinking of doing. Give us feedback. Obviously, feedback might be a bit difficult given that, they don't have the sort of flexibility that they would normally have in terms of days. It's a case of we've just got to get this done in this time frame. You need to get it in there. You need to get in, get out at some point. So it's got to happen. There was talks about even Perth moving to New South Wales or something. I think I heard on Twitter during the week. So there's probably some sort of logistics things they have to work out with that as well. But I would imagine if they're talking about July 16, I would think we would know by the end of June. Clubs would probably already know, and they're probably already planning for that. So, publicly knowing is a lot different than the team. So, well, he's hoping the clubs and players know before the public.
Yeah. Well, Joel, obviously, when we spoke to Jimmy Gardner the week before last, he was working under the information that most of the Jets games would be able to play at home, with the exception of, I think, the derby would be played down in Central Coast. All of the other clubs would be playing in New South Wales. Except for maybe if there was a Melbourne derby or something along those lines, that'd be played down in Melbourne, so wouldn't need to have two Melbourne teams travelling up to Sydney, obviously. But obviously also what's been happening, and I think the reason why it hasn't been publicised yet is because everything's changing with easings of restrictions, and now Victoria's had a little spike in cases over the last couple of days. So they're probably just keeping their powder dry to wait and see what happens before they fully confirm the plans, and probably has to be signed off in the next week or two anyway. So I'd say we're probably going to get some information about it in the next week or so.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think people are, pretty, acceptable. It's acceptable to the public that we understand that it's all a bit loose and all a bit random because such strange times. But from what I've heard, we're owed 2 home games and we could get a third. I won't go into details on that, but hopefully there could be 3. I'd like to, potentially the derby could be played at home, even though it's meant to be at Gosford. So there's, but because we had that game with City, the last game of the league in March, I don't think we'll play in the first week, in the first round. So we should probably play in the last week of July and have 4 games in 3 weeks, I think the plan is.
So how, Lukey, with the respect of the games taking place over a fairly short period of time, are you surprised that the NRL and AFL are already back, and yet we're taking it a lot slower, and we're getting training underway first, doing that for a month, and then getting back into the season? Why do you think the NRL and AFL have just jumped straight back into it with like maybe a week's preparation, whereas we're taking our time and doing things slightly differently?
I think part of that was because the NRL just got in straight away. Like they went mid-April when we were still fairly active with ongoing cases and everything. We were starting to flatten it out, but they just went out and were like, yeah, we're doing it on this day. We don't care. And at that point in time, I was very much, that's not going to happen. They're a bunch of idiots. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's happened. I'm still cautious of it. There's AFL's been back for 1 week, 1.5 weeks, and already a player's tested positive. So, it's interesting to see what will happen there, because obviously you've got his team's got to go into lockdown now if they've been around him. And I think I heard that they played a game the night before and the week before. So now there's 3 teams potentially that have been exposed to that. So, it's easy to see how it can sort of blow up again. Why did we take so long? I don't know whether part of that was the fact that Fox were trying to just get out of the contract, which I'm sure we'll talk about in detail in a bit. I think that would have been part of the reason. And I think part of it would have just been as well, they were more... they weren't jumping and screaming. They weren't jumping and screaming as much as the NRL and the AFL were before this even started, when they were like, the first talk of any lockdown in the NRL came out and they're like, we need government support, we won't survive and everything. Whereas the FFA and football, there was nothing publicly. It was just like, well, we'll manage, we'll deal with it. So I think part of it would have been they were more like, let's just wait and see. Let's make sure we do everything right. Let's get into, make sure that government regulations are abided by, that we are in a position to be able to continue, because the worst part would be to start and then have to stop again because there's a spread in the league. So I think that would probably be why. I think another reason would be because we will probably be looking at doing 2-3 games a week. I think I saw on Twitter, and I don't know how right this was, it was in a news article or something, that Laurie said that we would have a game on like July 21 and then July 24, 26 or something like that. So where the NRL are playing, they do have, I think, Thursday to Monday games or something like that, but they're not doing like Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. So, which we would probably be more inclined to do. So I think giving our players a bit more time to get into that sort of routine, so they don't just go from doing the one game a week like they would do during a regular season, and then straight into that, oh, you haven't done anything for 3 months, play 3 games in a week. I think it's more just to condition the players so there isn't any backlash on that end, and try and keep on the PFA's good side with that as well.
Joel, how happy are you with the cautious approach? Do you think that's we're basically we've probably been more beholden to a Fox Sports issue than anyone else. NRL and AFL were able to renegotiate their contracts pretty quickly, whereas ours has taken a lot more time, and that's probably why it's taken so long to get things back underway. But on the opposite side of it, it has meant that we're able to sort of sit back and see how everything's unfolding before we have to jump back into the season again. But we'll try and get the season over and done with inside of a month before we have a couple, probably 2 weeks for finals to take place after that. So, how are you happy with that?
Yeah, I think there were 2 factors. One was that we were towards the end of our season, whereas they were towards the beginning. So they really wanted to get it underway. They needed to, but our season had played out largely. And the second thing, absolutely, Foxtel was holding the FFA to ransom with a gun to their head, and we'll talk about that later. But that to me is that's the elephant in the room.
Yeah. Well, the big change that's going to be taking place is Joel, is the next season, 2020-2021 season, is going to be right from December to July, with the finals involved. How, obviously there's been talk over especially the last couple of weeks with all the golden generation being used in concern. It's been very interesting watching all of the older football heads and ex-players starting to be a lot more vocal around the game in the last couple of months with everything that's gone on. And one of the things that's obviously come up a couple of times was switching back to a winter time period to play the games and be more aligned with the NPL seasons and Europe and everything else around that. So what do you think about the switch for next season for December to July? Do you think it's going to be an ongoing thing? We're going to... And what do you think the other codes are going to do? Are they going to have to change where their season falls, or are they going to go straight back to where they were used to playing and we are going to have to compete directly with them? How do you think this is all going to play out?
Yeah, so I guess the first distinction is it's a December to July, so it's effectively starting at the height of summer and finishing in the depths of winter. So it's not a fully aligned winter season for that year, and there's a lot of talk about progressing to that into the future. And I used to not be an advocate. I thought it was stupid to move to winter for the same reasons everyone throws up. But I've actually changed my mind on it in the last few months. I'm speaking to various people and really have changed my mind on it. So I think, I think December to July is easy to do. It's only pushing the season back 2 months. We're still going to have the issues, the summer problems with the oppressive heat, right through December to February, but I think it's a good thing to move us towards a winter comp, and like I said, I've come around to that idea. I think alignment with Asia, alignment with NPL, alignment with it's a winter sport globally is a good thing, and my big thing, which lots of people have said before me, but I really believe it now, is that we need to be mature enough and big enough to stop trying to kowtow to the other codes, because they don't give a shit about us and we shouldn't care about them. And I think football fans want to watch football, and if it's on at the same time as NRL, well, so be it. Some fans will have to make a decision. Other fans, I actually don't know anyone in my social group that has an NRL or AFL membership. I know hundreds of A-League fans. I don't know any of them that do. So I just don't. I'd love to see a study that asks the question: what is the crossover? How many people will be torn? Oh my God! I normally spend money on the Knights and the Jets, and now I've got to do it at the same time. Well, if you currently do it, just because it's at the same time, it's no different to doing it at different times of the year, right? So you're still spending the same amount of money. So I think a lot of the arguments that traditionally people put forward don't really hold up under scrutiny. That's a long-winded answer, Grant.
No, that's all right. It's all content, mate. What about you, Lucky? What are your thoughts on the switch to winter, whether it be temporary or permanent?
I think to start off with, how would it potentially affect the other codes? I don't think it will as well. I don't think it will at all, because as Joel said, they don't give a stuff about us. They would just be like, "No, we're doing it. You got to work around us." So I don't think. I mean, we do sort of have to do that anyway between March and May, March and the end of the season as it is. In terms of the whole people, picking memberships or picking which one they do, I mean, it's not like the Jets and the Knights are going to be playing at home at the same time. They may both play at home on a weekend. They both may play away on a weekend. One may be home, one may be away. Hopefully it doesn't get to a point where it is, the Jets play at home and the Knights are on TV in Melbourne or something, so people are staying home watching that instead. As Joel said, I probably in the same boat as him. I know heaps of people with an A-League membership, not many with an NRL. I don't think I actually know anyone in particular with an AFL one, maybe. So, I think for that regard, I think we just got to do it. In terms of how I feel personally, my one concern of it would be, I hope that there is no Jets games that sort of clash with my own community games. It was bad enough for the grand final. I had to play up at Tanambit in the afternoon, drive back home, and then go straight to the grand final. Like, that was a bit of a rush, and I don't quite know how they would be able to get around that. I feel like people are going to miss out, and if I'm going to miss out, obviously, if it came to a clash, I would probably go with my community side, because I can't really leave them short. Like, see you guys, I'm off to a Jets game that half of you are members to, and you're still playing. But I'd be pretty disappointed in having to miss a Jets game over it.
I kind of love that though as well, not missing it, but I love the fact that, there is this tension between your community club, you playing and watching the Jets. And I also love the idea of those mad dashes where I'm madly dashing from my kid's game with him and my daughter, because she loves it, and to an A-League game, and they're playing at the same time you're playing, and there'll be the odd clash, but it's not going to be every week, and I kind of think it just adds to the whole life of football that we all love.
Is there any ways to mitigate that with scheduling? Maybe schedule the A-League games for later, or the NPL, the community games, be scheduled earlier in the day, or did that?
You probably could, but if they're going to be insisting on having the two games on the Saturday night, one starting at 5, one starting at 7:30 for the Fox broadcast, I'm pretty sure there's all age games that kick off at 6 p.m. on a Saturday. There's that many clubs, there's that many teams and stuff that even when they're all cramped in together, there's games not kicking off till 6 p.m. as it is. So then they're not finished until 7:30. By that point, if it's a 5 o'clock game, it's done. But I think that's just going to be a problem that's going to happen all around the country with it. I feel like most states would be in the same position as us. So it's not just a Newcastle problem.
And also, Lukey, in summer, when that's not happening, there are other community organisations that people are involved in. There's the beautiful Newcastle beaches calling us. Do I go to the game at 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock when it's stinking hot, or do I stay at the beach till 8 o'clock because it's daylight savings and the whole thing's awesome? So I think people are always going to be torn. But the alignment with NPL, the alignment with a potential second division, the alignment with Asia, the grown-up nature that says we don't care what the other codes are doing, just like they don't care about us. We're just going to put on football at the right time of year to play football and get away from all the problems of heat. And just get on with it. I think I've really changed my tune on it. I think
that's the thing. Football is by far the most played sport in the country at a grassroots level. So, it's a case of they just need to get that and be able to get that crowd in to support the A-League and stuff. If we did that, we would be the one calling the shots.
Yeah.
But I sort of think for football in this country as a whole, if they're aligning with grassroots, then that can only be good. If we're aligning with our closest neighbors in Asia, that can only benefit us and give us more of a shot in Asia for the Champions League. Like, yeah, we've had one club in Australia win it. We've had one other club make the final. But if we, as it is, we struggle in it because everyone else, by the time it gets to knockouts and stuff, they're mid-season, we're in pre-season. So if we're on a level playing field with them, then hopefully that would, I guess the other side argument to that is the fact that we still lose to them even though they're in their pre-season. So but yeah, I think if ever there was a time for football to switch back to winter, this is it. This has been the reset, like the sort of, I guess, blessing in disguise, if you could call it that. That if there was a perfect time to do it, this would be as close as any, I reckon.
Do you think, Joel, that the NRL and AFL seasons will be adjusted going forward? Obviously, will they? They're obviously they're gonna run long because that's just the case with taking 3 months off. But do you think those codes are going to have to change their season, or are they going to look to just have a shortened off season and then go back to normal? Yeah.
I honestly have no idea. I also don't care what they do, but I just don't know. But I'm so excited to think about our game because I think this change that's happening, and I'm not just talking about the change in the timing for next season, but the whole dynamic of the last 15 years of the A-League feels like it's really starting to shift. And I think that's really exciting because it brings opportunities to make more sweeping changes.
The reason I brought up the other codes is mainly the other topic that we do have to discuss when switching and being more efficient with those codes is going to be, and it's the same thing people bring up all the time, is the multi-use facilities. We're going to be playing football the same time as the Knights are going to be cutting up the stadium surface. Luke, is that something that we're just going to have to, I mean, obviously we get complaints all the time. Like I know Suncorp's especially bad with their surface getting cut up for Broncos games, especially in winter when it's raining a lot more and it takes longer for the grass and the turf to recover. This is going to have to kickstart a move away from these big stadiums and getting into more boutique venues, especially in places like Brisbane and where they're using the same venue as two other bloody teams. Newcastle is probably the same, but we're sort of a little bit stuck for choice. We've either got 35,000 seat Hunter Stadium or what if 5,000 at number 2, I think.
Yep, 5.
So, yeah, you sort of got, there's nothing sort of really in between, but it's going to have to, if we're going to be concentrating on our sport ourselves, it's going to have to be something that, and the MLS did it over 15 years there. A lot of their teams are moving into their own venues. It's going to have to start a long-term plan for football clubs to cater for themselves and getting away from these mixed-use sporting facilities. Off mute.
I had the mouse on another page, so it was scrolling down a page instead of unmuting me here. Yeah, as you said, we're sort of stuck in what option do we have? It's either over the top or nowhere near our demands. I think in terms of sharing venues, realistically, most clubs are going to be sharing a venue with someone else. Maybe Adelaide. Realistically, Adelaide and Perth. But did they not say that the Force are coming back and they play at HBF? So
I didn't hear that.
I think I heard that the Force were coming back. So if that's the case and they're sharing a venue with them, then it's probably Adelaide and maybe Central Coast. I don't know if they have any other rugby league play down there. Maybe Wyong play there or something. But it's definitely a problem we have. And the frustrating part about it is I don't know if you guys remember last Asian Champions League, Melbourne Victory played Daegu from Korea, who were the Korean champions for that year. They had just opened up a new 12,000 seat stadium, which cost $60 million, or like something really minuscule compared to the billions of dollars they talk about for the stadiums in Sydney. If we were able to do something like that with that sort of money, like some real cheap compared to what the $500 million, the $1 billion, or whatever it is for the SFS and for Olympic Park. That'd be the perfect thing. Where are we going to get someone with $60 million? That's the problem. Like, how would we get that for us to use privately?
Yeah.
I don't think the AFL or the NRL would change. I don't think they'd do anything. They'd just be like, no, we're running our season as per normal. You just got to deal with it. Like, they're not gonna do anything. They're just gonna do it how they want, because it's tradition that they have the grand finals last week of September, first week of October. Why would they change for football? Why would they change for soccer?
Yeah.
So
I wasn't talking about them changing for anyone else. It was because everyone else is having to change things around due to the delays and everything being shut down. Whether they would look outside the box and maybe look at adjusting their season to finish differently. But who knows what's going to happen? It was just something I was wondering if it was a possibility, or if they would just do what you say and they're just going to jump straight back into their normal timeframes for their seasons going forward.
I think they just jump straight back into it. They made such a big fuss about how much they needed government funding. I think they would see it as, well, the sooner we can get back to normality, the sooner we can go on with life as we would know it regularly. So that's what I sort of think they would do in that regard.
Yeah, I was just talking about this. I think what'll have to happen, the good thing is that the NRL doesn't own its own stadiums. And of course, neither does the A-League. The AFL do own some of their own. But because of that fact, it's not like we have to beg the NRL for use of their stadiums or anything like that. It's about, Venues New South Wales and the other stadium owners. And it's just working with the different stadiums, working much, much harder on the fixtures to make sure that if Broncos and the AFL team up there, Lions, are both playing at Suncorp one weekend, then we need to be playing at probably a Dolphin down in Redcliffe, but then Dolphin has their rugby league in the Super Cup or whatever, and it's just about scheduling. So I think it'll make fixture scheduling more complicated, but I think it's definitely doable. Teams like West Tigers play between Campbelltown and between the other stadium I'm thinking of. So I think it's just scheduling, but totally doable. And I also don't think it's a reason not to go to winter. A lot of people, I used to say, can't possibly play in winter. You got to share the ovals and they chew up the grass. But then one of you made the point earlier, we do that every April, May,
Finals.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of finals.
Yeah. And I've been speaking to people who've played the game for years at a high level, and they've said, we just always used to do that, and you just deal with it. And as a short to medium term solution, it'll work. And as a medium to long term solution, we try and look at building more boutique, smaller 12,000 seat stadiums.
And the clubs are obviously also, I think another major thing that's going to have to happen is the clubs are going to have to hold these venue management to account with regards to how well they take care of the pitches and how well things recover and everything else. So that's been something I think we've not done very well over the course of the A-League's history. And that's something that's going to have to change, because we're paying them rent and we're not getting a viable product sometimes to be able to play the style of football on that's conducive for crowd enjoyment. All right, so Simon Kelly put in a question on the Jetstream Facebook page that asking us about our thoughts about the shift to winter. I think we've covered about 25 minutes on that, so hopefully, Simon, that answered your question. All right, so the other big thing that came out was we had a period of about 3 or 4 days, Lukey, where we didn't know whether we were even going to be on TV when this new season, the rescheduled for the season, was announced. But thankfully, Friday, we found out that Fox Sports and the FFA have signed a deal. It's reportedly in the region of $32 million, down from 57, and it's just for the remainder of this season and next season, the December to July window, and that will be it. And then the deal will be finished, which gives the FFA 12 months to sort out what we're going to do going forward. And it's also thrown up a very enticing prospect of possibly the FFA handling football broadcasting in-house and being able to set up some sort of streaming platform, because the FFA Cup is not part of the new Fox Sports deal. It's going to have to be somewhere else. So first of all, what are your thoughts on the FFA signing a lower deal? It does mean that $32 million, it's, some of that money's not all, how much of the current broadcast deal goes to the A-League and the rest goes to everything else. How much is that going to affect salary caps? It had to happen. They were lowballing us for wanting to sign it for an $11 million season, which was never going to happen. But it's good that we've signed a deal. We are getting some money. Fox Sports have saved some money. We're getting decent amount of money, not as much as we wanted, but it's still going to be broadcast, and that it gives us time to shop around for other options.
I think the shopping around for other options thing is going to be real important, because I think Fox won out of it, and I'm surprised. I was glad to hear that we got an extension for a year, but also it's a bit like they clearly just don't want us anymore. If you followed it from the get-go, from when the suspension kicked in, it's been a case of them trying to get out of it immediately. So I think, I don't know how like an FFA in-house broadcasting streaming service would work. I feel people would sort of just look at that as it's another thing I've got to buy on top of Netflix, Stan, etc., Foxtel, like the Fox Sports package. Like for me personally, if the A-League is off there, we won't have it. Like that's not even an issue for us. Like the only reason we have Fox is for the A-League. So like for me, that's okay. But for other people who do enjoy watching the other sports that are on there, what do? Do they keep the thing with more sports, or they just get something just for the A-League? I think there's been a lot of talk from people about wanting Optus. And I think with all the stuff that Optus have had in the last couple of months with the Golden Generation and being so critical, I guess, of the FFA and football in general in Australia, with the whole, back in my day, this is how football was run and this is how clubs and players did stuff, and it was so much better then, whatever. But I think that was sort of trying to force someone's hand as well, as there needs to be some sort of change. And I think Optus were trying to get their own say of things into it as well, into, I guess, changing it to a winter season, which may be more enticing for them to sort of be able to provide a range of like options, both locally and internationally, all year round.
What about you, Joel? What are your thoughts on the and how feasible you think a streaming platform for the FFA would be? I know that obviously there's sports over in America that do it. I think Major League Baseball or is it the basketball have a streaming service where all the games are carried and I think it would be more benefit. I think they would probably look to try and somehow set up broadcasting of NPL and lower league games, throwing all that in as part of that streaming service would help add value, as well as having the FFA Cup. The A-League would obviously, and the Socceroos would obviously be top tier content you'd want to get into free to wear, or whether it's on Optus, who knows. But how well do you think a streaming service would work for the FFA?
I want to come to that point, but I think it's important to just note how we got to the point where we're talking about this. So as far as I'm concerned, Foxtel, which is 60% owned by News Corp, Murdoch, and 40% owned by Telstra, they've done a terrible job in the last 10 years preparing for streaming in general. And so Foxtel subscriptions have been decreasing year after year after year, and they never reached more than about 35% penetration ever. So they've just never done it. The Foxtel company is $2 billion in debt. News Corp's giving them $300 million loans every so often. They're completely screwed, right? And so that's why they're screwing us. And it's not through our fault. It's not through any fault of our own. And football's fault, but Foxtel are entirely to blame here. They've been incompetent in strategizing for a future where they can have sustainable subscription TV as opposed to streaming platforms. So let's park that and say, thanks, Foxtel, for being incompetent. Then what have they done? We've gone, shit, we're $2 billion in the red. Let's go and use the COVID pandemic to exploit a loophole in the A-League contract because we didn't play for 20 days consecutively because of COVID. Let's renegotiate the whole contract down from 57 to 11 million. This is unconscionable behaviour. No one's talking about this. These guys have used a loophole because of a health crisis to try and screw down the game that they're meant to have been supporting. It's really poor form, right? Really poor form. So they've held a gun to the A-League's, to FFA's head, and credit to JJ, the CEO of FFA, has managed to come out of this with 32 million. But it's still a 44% reduction from the 57 million that we get each year, right? So what that means is a whole lot of issues that we'll talk about later about player wages. They're going to have to drop across the board. The cap is going to have to be scrapped or dropped. It can't be maintained because what's 3 million per club times we're going to have 12 clubs this year? That's more than the entire 32 million deal, right? So the whole thing, Rome is burning as far as I'm concerned, and it could be a good thing. So thanks, Foxtel, for that. Well done, James Johnson, for getting a 12-month, 18-month deal where we can plan for a future. But to Luke's point, the divorce is on. Foxtel don't want us. We need to plan for something else. Now, is the answer to just give it to another broadcaster, SBS, ABC, Optus, someone? I don't think so. I think there's a shift in the way broadcasting is working and fragmenting globally. And what the Golden Generation's proposal was about was owning this, they call it OTT, over-the-top broadcasting. So it's not to say, what it means is that FFA would own the broadcast and they would own the digital broadcast, and that they would not necessarily, they wouldn't film it themselves. They'll bring in, there's plenty of these guys like Bar TV and other people that they could bring in. And it's not to say that they would sell subscriptions and you had to buy that subscription to watch it. They would own it, create it, and then they would sell it on to free-to-air, right? To free-to-air and to digital providers. And of course, they've still got the MyFootball platform. Now, the MyFootball app, the numbers are massive. So the numbers that watch that far outweigh the numbers that watch it on Foxtel. So I think, and do you have to buy it, Lukey? Well, you play, so you don't have to buy it. The Golden Generation's proposal is that anyone who's a registered player gets the streaming platform for free. So 2 million Australians straight away would get the streaming platform for free. People who are a Telstra customer who have the app, hundreds of thousands of them, they already get it for free. So there's millions of Australians that wouldn't have to pay for it. And they're the ones that are the football fans who probably want it. So the number of people that have to pay for it are probably only this big. So I'm really excited about this because, to your point, Grant, absolutely right. Imagine whether FFA owned every A-League game, every W League game, every futsal game, power chair game, NPL, Youth League, Matildas, Socceroos, beach football, walking ball, whatever form of the game was all owned, filmed, content produced by FFA, owned by FFA, and then on-sold globally, digital advertising revenue, and all of a sudden, here's your tens of millions back. Now, that won't happen overnight, but as a concept, I think it's bold, terrifying, brilliant, and something we should absolutely be looking to do.
Well, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they can monetize that, because you'd think trying to get as many people as possible to pay for a service to replace what you'd be getting Foxtel to pay to broadcast would be the way that the system would pay for itself and fund all the levels of football to the levels that it needs to be. But because obviously the professional clubs aren't going to be in a position to self-fund themselves for decades.
Nope.
They're going to be getting money at some point, some sort of grants from the government, from the FFA going forward. But to way to maximize that, I mean, you have a service you pay $9.99 a month for. You've got 500,000 subscribers paying that a month. That's a whole bunch of money coming in. But if you're giving it away for free to people who are registered players and the people you'd want to try to get to pay for this service, maybe there'd be a reduction in what you charge people.
Yeah, it's the advertisers. So it's about creating it, giving it to the football fans who are registered football players for free, and then selling it to free to wear and getting advertising revenue for free to wear and digital. And that's where the model stacks up. But it also requires some of the registration money to go through from grassroots through to FFA TV. However, what they're also saying is, I think if Foxtel's something like $100,000 a game or $100,000 a weekend or something or more to produce it. Whereas what Golden Generation are saying is, let's cut the costs out of this. Let's have a slightly less professional coverage. And let's do it. They reckon they can do it for $10,000 a game instead of $100,000 a game. So cut a whole heaps of costs out of it. Just bring all the costs down. The players' wages need to come down. Everything needs to come down in cost to allow it to happen. Reward registered players with free, and then on-sell it globally, digitally, and domestically to a free-to-wear, and on-sell sponsorship. So is that like a definite, this can work? I don't know, but I think it sounds pretty good.
$100,000 a weekend. Most of that would be Simon Hill's pay packet. I don't know. But
well, you see the guys in the trucks, like these incredible. I mean, don't get me wrong, Foxtel are an amazing footballing broadcasting beast, but it's high end stuff. And I think to get the costs out of it, it just needs to come down. I don't want it to be down that low that there's one camera doing these ones.
Yeah.
But there's a middle ground.
All right. Okay, so we'll jump into Jets stuff now, because I'm conscious of Joel needing to head off at some point. So we'll try and get this wrapped up. Lukey, a lot of information coming out in the last couple of days with regards to the sale of the club. There is apparently two bids going. One of them is a Sydney consortium. We don't know who or what's going on with them, but it's. After, again, we spoke to James Gardner the other week, and he said he'd be very surprised if Martin Lee was still the owner in 12 months' time. It looks like the sale might go through sooner rather than later. And in the current economic climate, I was actually shocked that there was two bids, one bid, let alone two bids. So and he's turned down a bid for, I believe, the article that I read, Laurie was quoted that he's turned down a 12 million bid. He's looking for 15, and that seems to be what the new consortiums are prepared to pay. So it looks like there might be some sort of sale going through sooner rather than later, and we'll be changing of owners again.
Well, yeah, hopefully this time it sort of sticks, and that our owners don't lose half their wealth in a night.
Yeah.
I am a bit surprised. I was a bit surprised to hear that there was a Sydney-based group that were looking to buy. But as you were saying, with the whole Jimmy Gardner saying that he'd be surprised if Martin Lee was still owner in 12 months' time, I've had those thoughts myself, mostly because of what's happening around the world at the moment with all the money issues with the COVID and everything. Sure. But part of it also was with, part of it was that the fear that, okay, how much has he lost, and how long is it going to take for him to just snap his fingers like, that's it, we're out? Because he did that with his club in Shenzhen. They were burning money, and once he lost half his wealth, he liquidated the club. But the other part of it was with all the stuff that was going on between Australia and China with the governments and everything. Like, at what point were they just going to be like, or was he going to be, I'm just out of this, I'm not dealing with any of the crap that's going on between these two countries. So, look, whether that was ever going to be a possibility, I don't know. But I think having something locally as in Australian, like if it's Sydney, it's still relatively close. But I think that's probably a good sign for us. The only thing would be if they were like, oh, we want to move the club down towards Sydney or something like that. Like, it's got to stay in Newcastle.
Yeah, that would have to be a light condition on the sale of the license, that the license remains.
Yeah, but yeah, it's I guess it seems pretty advanced in negotiations and everything. So hopefully, we get some positive news from it soon.
It's been really unfortunate, Joel. Like, when Martin Lee came in, he was. I've got nothing but positives to say about him. He stepped in at a time when the Jets were not a great prospect. He's turned the club around. He brought the right people in the right positions. Those people made the decisions, the right decisions eventually, with bringing in Ernie and with the players that they brought in, improved the product, improved the community engagement. But he's been a really unfortunate victim of circumstance in global politics and economic climates shifting. And we've seemed to have suffered from that. The last three owners that we've had have all lost their money due to various outside factors. So you feel really sorry for Martin Lee. I think his heart was in the right place, and he wanted to do good here. But just with the changes to moving Chinese money offshore, the trade wars going on between the US and China, basically halving his wealth overnight or over a couple of months, the global pandemic, everything has just conspired to really, unfortunately, make his position as an owner untenable, and really been struggling to pay. He's been really struggling to pay the bills. Laurie was quite adamant that things are just about up to date with getting players paid and bills paid. It's been a struggle that everyone else has been having. But yeah, you really feel for Martin Lee, and there's not much else you can say really, but hope that whoever comes in is going to have similar thoughts and similar professional outlook that he had.
Yeah, that's got to be the way I see it. Is the new owners have got to come in thinking we can get this club relatively cheaply. I mean, we saw Western United paid $15 million for their license, so this is no different. So it's the cheapest price you can effectively get an A-League club for now. Yes, it's been losing a couple of mil a year for a few years, but it hasn't had massive amounts of investment in it. I mean, you guys have seen, the offices and the training area at the university. It's on a shoestring compared to something like Melbourne City with their Star Wars shaped ice baths, and we literally ice bath in wheelie bins, literally. So look, you got these new owners. They've picked up the club hopefully for the cheapest price of $15 million. If they can see that if they can invest and get in some great players, especially if player prices are going to be coming down in the future, and they can get the club up to one of those consistently top four clubs, then they can start making a profit. But if they're seeing it as, I want to make a profit from day dot, we're screwed, because that's not going to happen. So we need someone with deep enough pockets that they can afford to make losses for 5 years until they build the club into the powerhouse that any club can be if you invest in it. And that's what I'm hoping for. And I'm just hoping that they're not from Newcastle, so they don't love Newcastle, but hopefully they love football, and hopefully they understand the football base up here is passionate, and they won't screw us over. But it's always with trepidation that you encounter a new owner, because you just don't want them to be ass hats. I tweeted.
And a consortium is going to spread the debt load across a number of people rather than it all being on one person's head. I hope it doesn't turn out like North Queensland did, where they all buggered off except for one, and that's when they had to close the club down. Ivan popped up a question on Twitter asking about why hasn't a consortium of local businesses put their hand up to run the club. I'm not sure. I know that there was local consortiums have put their hands up in the past, then got the bid from Nathan. I'm pretty sure there was a local consortium around bidding for the club around the time that they gave the license to Nathan Tinkler, and that probably basically they walked away. We're hoping that the FFA in their dealings with these people that want to become involved in football aren't going to make the same mistakes of the past, where we had the Southern expansion team. They walked away when they didn't get MacArthur. Maybe it would have been a good idea to try and get them involved in other football clubs that are currently around, rather than trying to set up their own. The local consortium that I mentioned that were bidding for the Jets back when we gave it to Nathan. You just hope that we can better leverage these business contacts. It would be good, Joel, to have a local consortium running the club for the local club and have that local focus, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that. But Newcastle's a very small pool. It's very difficult to find people with that sort of money behind them to be able to put their hand up and say, yes, we want to run this club, especially if that pool has already been burnt once before when they put their hand up and the FFA said thanks, but no thanks. So, you know, how many times can you try and get the same people or the same group of people to become involved again?
I just don't know how long the list of, multi-millionaire football loving business people there are in Newcastle. Is there 50? Is there 3? Do they want to invest? Are they prepared to lose $2 million a year for the next few years after laying down 15?
Who are they? Like, you know, you don't hear, I mean, you know, how much money does Super Hubert have? I don't know. There's not that many people that you know of that are rich people in the Newcastle area. You hear about Sydney millionaires all the time. You don't really hear about Newcastle millionaires.
I did like Joel Griffiths' wife thought I owned Inspirations Paint. And we're at some awards night or something, and I'm telling her that, no, I'm just an employee. I don't own it. And she's like, oh, I thought you like flew in helicopters and shit. And I'm like, no,
Joel's like, I do fly in on helicopters, but I'm not the owner.
Yeah. No, I certainly don't have any money. Sorry, Jets. If I won Lotto tomorrow, if I won $100 million tomorrow, the Jets would be the first thing I bought. I can guarantee you that. But I just can't see it happening. I'd love it too, but I just hope that whoever they do bring on, and they desperately need it, and to Laurie's credit, he's done a bloody great job getting through the last few years with limited funds and on a shoestring, and then getting new owners interested. He's bloody good at it. He was the one behind getting Martin interested in the first place. So good on him. I just hope they're not arse-hats. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. You'd be more confident about what's taking place with the people that we have in positions of authority now than what you would have been in the past. So the club is better set up now, and you would hope that they would make the right decisions, that this would be, and we would be moving forward rather than.
Yeah, but they don't have a choice though, Furns, because there's no profit being made every year. There's losses, right? So if you're $2 million in a hole every year, if an owner comes along and they're like mildly arsehattish, you're gonna have to say yes. So that's why I'm just like this, because who knows who they are? They could be awesome, or they could be arsehatts. So it's like an awesome to arsehat scale.
Lukey, what are your thoughts on it?
I think mine are pretty similar to Joel's. I think in terms of a local consortium, like how many people would be in a position to group together and buy a club? It's not even just a case of us. It's the West, like with the Jets as well. With the Knights as well. It took how many years for West to finally buy them?
For $1.
$1, yeah, $1. But I think locally, the dream would be to have a local consortium. That'd be the dream. But I just don't know how many people would be in a position to do that here. You know, a lot of the money's Sydney, Melbourne, elsewhere. So, yeah, that would probably be my reasoning behind why I personally think we haven't had anyone locally pop up, is because of that. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe there are those people out there that have had someone whispering in there and say, don't do it, or whether those people who did it previously are now, we tried once and we didn't do it, so we're not going to bother now. So whether we've burned our only real bridge that we've got here. But that was my initial thought, was that we just don't have sort of the wealth that Sydney and Melbourne in general have.
All right, so fingers crossed that it's all going to work out. So we'll see what comes on in the following weeks and months with regards to ownership. Right, we'll quickly cover off some of the playing and squad news, the squad and coach and staff news before we wrap it up. Joel, it looks like from the reports that I've read that Carl, Kenny, and Joe Ledley will be coming back to Newcastle in sooner rather than later. They were anticipating, hopefully they would be able to be departing at some point over the next couple of days to be back here. Unfortunately, Wes won't be back for the remainder of this season, but there are negotiations with him coming back for next season. And also have to mention the other assistant coach that got hired, Darren Baisley, who's in New Zealand. So that's all these border force approvals and stuff have been, from what I read, have been approved. So it's good that we're going to have Carl and Kenny and the overseas contingent will be back in the country sooner rather than later, and it will be pretty much a full strength outfit to start this mad dash to the finish.
Yeah, I think I hope Deansy will probably come back and be in charge if the coaches can't get out of quarantine before the first match or whatever, or in the lead up to the first match. I'm pretty sure Deansy's been involved at training.
Yeah, I think Deansy and Daniel McBreen are handling training from reading.
So that's good. But yeah, hearing the boys are back, I mean, we're all so excited to see the way Carl was coaching them when in his first few games, and Joe Ledley is a beast, so that's great as well. And
I have to grow the beard out for him again.
Yeah, definitely.
We all do, absolutely. And get, epic 8-pack and abs as well. But anyway, it's another story. So Wesy, like Wes Houlihan, I love him. I just love watching that guy play football at McDonald Jones. Like, he's so much talent. I know he's about 83, but bring him back if you can, he's so bloody good. I'm really excited by Ledley and Wesy.
I haven't heard anything about Bernie Abini though. That's been interesting. That's sort of.
He's been at training.
He's been at training. When NBN had the thing about them going and getting tested on Monday, he was in a few of the shots they had and everything.
Yep. Cool. No, that's good.
And Arroyo's still hanging around because he hasn't been able to get home to Panama, and so I think he'll play the last 4 matches and then he'll depart us.
Yeah, it's worth highlighting that Arroyo, unfortunately, has been stuck in Australia on his own since the pandemic started. The borders to Panama closed. He couldn't get back there.
And he hasn't been able to get the JobKeeper payment because he's not Australian. So
yeah, and his girlfriend's stuck over in New York, I think, as well. So yeah, he's been basically on his own for the last couple of months. So yeah, hopefully the guy, and from what I remember talking to the various players about and coaches about him, he has been they've been making sure that they're keeping in contact with him. Possible. So yeah, then the club has been supporting him, which they didn't need to do because they've had more than enough financial problems to worry about, but they've been supporting him through the time. So that's great. The other news that came out, 2 more bits of news to cover off, well timed after we spoke to Glen Moss with Patrick from Phoenix City last weekend. He confirmed, I think, on Tuesday that his retirement is now. He's not coming back for the remaining couple of games. So he has officially retired now. And I think, Lukey, he's announced he's going to be a goalkeeping coach at MacArthur.
Yeah, I think I heard that a while back, even before the lockdown, when he first announced that he was going to retire at the end of the season. There was some article about him going to be keeper coach. I don't think they announced the club. I don't think they necessarily said it was MacArthur, but it was an unnamed club, and that was months ago. So, that's not really too much of a surprise. I don't think that he's picked up a gig. Yeah,
but 250 A-League games, played for 5 clubs. He's took... very interesting talking to him last week. Hopefully everybody...
Very, very smart man. Yeah. Very smart man. And
and just a really nice bloke. And he's been around. He's been... and he just loves football.
Yeah, so, it's unlucky for us. Like, we're losing out on having a well-experienced international coach on our books. But wherever he ends up, if it's MacArthur, they're going to be very lucky, I think, to have him on board, because he's been doing a lot of the goalkeeper coaching for the youth teams in the NPL and stuff. So,
well, he lives in Sydney, so I'm assuming that's why he took that job. So it'd be closer to home, wouldn't have to travel as far. But Joel, a legend of a player. He's, like I said, he's played for 5 clubs, 250 games, international, played against some of the best players, World Cups and World Cup qualifiers. So a really great career.
Drew, with Italy 1-1 in the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, playing for New Zealand. What a legend. So, yeah, no, I wish him all the best. Outstanding. And hopefully, you never know, he might come back as our goalkeeper coach down the track.
But yeah, and thanks again. I sent him a message privately, but again, thank him publicly thank Mossy publicly for agreeing to and giving us so much of his time last weekend. And Joel, while we're with you, the last bit of news that we had was we'd signed. This happened a couple of days, week and a half ago, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it. James Donachie signed for us for 3 seasons, I believe the deal was, which is a bit of a surprise. Usually we only sign them for 1 or 2, but we're getting a really good player who's played for Melbourne Victory for a long time, and may be able to pay back for a certain grand final incident that
maybe he comes. Maybe he comes with the button to short out VAR, that he just can press it and do the header and unpress it. But yeah, no, look, we discovered before the pod that he's 27 and in his prime, and I think it's no secret that we all, Nigel Bogart isn't going to play forever. I don't know if he'll play again next season or not, but certainly coming to the end of his tenure, and Topper Stanley's no spring chicken either. So although we've got Lockie Jackson coming, through rehab, I think it's good to shore up your centre backs.
And thanks very much, Joel, for our episode title, Donachie's VAR button.
The other thing that we had was Kane Shepherd's been released.
Yep.
To pursue other opportunities. So expect him to either pop up somewhere else in the A-League or at an NPL club soon, I reckon.
And we are hearing news that we are hearing rumours, unsubstantiated rumours. We don't know whether they're true or not. Boogs was looking at a contract in India, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Was what I read circulating around somewhere. I don't know who I heard that from. It could be complete bullshit. I don't know, but that was what I'd heard. I have been trying to get Laurie to get me in contact with Boog so we can have him on as one of the video AMA guests, but we're still working through that. So come on, Laurie. I need guests over the next couple of weeks before the season starts. But any other news that we need to cover off, Luke or Joel? Have we missed anything else? I'm just trying to think.
Well, we haven't talked about the W League, but I haven't heard too much on that front either. I've seen the girls working out on Instagram on their feeds and continuing to stay fit during COVID. But hopefully, the W League will be back in full force at the same time.
I believe that Fox Sports deal for next season covers the W League as well, so we'll be back in some capacity. But we just don't know when. Anything else, Lukey? Or have we
Not that I can think of.
Pretty much covered it all off. It's been a good chat.
It's been great.
Yeah, it's been great, mate. Joel, thanks very much for joining us, mate. It's been a while since we've seen you. People can still hit you up on Twitter. What's the Twitter handle, and how can they get in contact?
I think it's creatively at Joel Goodsir.
Oh, that's one of your best. What about you, Lukey?
What's my Twitter?
Yeah. Is that Mr. Glass, isn't it?
Mr. Glass 23.
Do you even look at it anymore? Or you're just concentrating on Twitch now, playing?
I do have a second Twitch. I do have a second one for Twitch,
right.
To try and not overlap too much. But no, I check it occasionally. But really,
aren't you the Topper Stanley fan club?
Yeah, I'm the Topper Stanley fan club still. I haven't changed that since Feb 29. So I think mostly the reason I go on Twitter now is to go and see, get political, see what rubbish has come out of America in the last in the last 24 hours. So that's my primary use of Twitter at the moment.
Yeah, and that's all you really need to do. It's all over there.
I think Trump's thing was on in Tulsa today. It had about as many fans as a Melbourne City home game.
Yep.
Oh, there was some real interesting stuff come out of that.
Yeah, apparently the game has reserved a whole bunch of like 1 million tickets, and as a well, I don't know what they called it, but they they trolled him massively, expecting 1 million people to rock up, and I think the 19,000 seat stadium was about a third full. So
I saw a photo of a Billie Eilish concert last year that had filled that exact stadium out.
Yeah,
it's like, well, she filled that out less than 12 months ago, and now this one's
I think Pink tweeted something similar. She sold out the same venue within about 5 minutes. So yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, that's about as political as this show gets. I think we will have to sign off on that note. So Joel, welcome back. Thanks very much for joining us. Hopefully, it won't be so long before we get to speak to you again.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's been a bloody hoot, and mate, this should be the most exciting season in a long time with all these changes. I'm like, Rome is burning, baby. I'm loving it. Let's put the sword through all the nonsense and move forward.
Joel's like that dog that's sitting in the fire saying, "This is fine."
Yeah, exactly right. Lukey, thanks very much for joining us, mate, and we will be hopefully getting back to our regular podcast schedule fairly soon.
Not a problem, Furns. Thanks for hosting.
All right. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for joining us. If you need to get in contact with us, social media at Jetstream Newey on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, or just put Jetstream Newey in your podcast app. Give us an email, podcast@newcastlefootball.net. Go to newcastlefootball.net/podcast for all of the links to all of our previous podcasts and to subscribe. Just newcastlefootball.net/TV for all the videos, and newcastlefootball.net/chronicles for the Championship Chronicles series that we recently re-highlighted, and people got to enjoy that again while we've been really searching for stuff to do during the coronavirus lockdown. So thanks very much, guys, and we will speak to you soon. Vamos el Jerkos.
Vamos el Jerkos.
Up the jetties.
And stop it.